Hi, I'm Chef Whitney Aronoff. I'm a health supportive chef in Southern California, and I am known for cooking high vibration foods. And today I want to show you a healthy recipe for mac and cheese. I call it my white cheddar and chard mac and cheese. And what makes this dish different is we're going to use an alternative pasta. We're going to use a brown rice quinoa pasta that works for most people's digestive system. And we're also going to use green chard. And the use of green chard, that beautiful leafy green, is to raise the vibration of the meal so you have a more balanced, health supportive dish. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So this mac and cheese is completely from scratch, and it's a pretty big mac and cheese. So we're going to use a full-size baking dish or Pyrex dish. My goal is that this is going to make a meal that will feed a whole family. Or if you're a smaller family or it's just you, you're going to have enough food for the week and maybe a little extra that you can put away in the freezer if you like, or, have some guests over. So first thing I'm going to do is cook my pasta. I mentioned I'm using a quinoa brown rice pasta blend. One of my favorite brands is Andean Dream. The pasta consistency comes out great every time. The taste is really good, and they have a variety of shapes. And the trick with using an alternative pasta for a mac and cheese recipe is to undercook it. So because we're going to bake the mac and cheese, you don't want to cook your pasta all the way, because when you mix in your cooked pasta with your cheese sauce, you don't want the pasta to just melt and come apart. So we're going to keep it super al dente. So this box tells me to cook my pasta 6 to 8 minutes. We're only going to cook it for 4 minutes. And because we're using such a large dish, we're going to use 2 packs of pasta to get it done. Like with all pasta, I'm going to give it a little stir so nothing sticks. And then I'm going to let it cook up over the next 4 minutes. I went ahead and already blanched my chard, which simply means I added 2 big bunches of green chard to salted boiling water, made sure it was fully immersed in the water, and then immediately pulled it out and strained it in a colander. So basically it's a different version of steaming. It's a lot faster, and the salt takes the bitterness out of the chard and makes it a little bit sweet and makes it a really lovely addition to the white cheddar mac and cheese. Something a little different from spinach, just to mix it up. So I'm gonna go ahead and start my cheese sauce. While my pasta's cooking, my chard's already done. I'm going to start with 1 stick of butter. And again, this is almost like a double recipe. So don't get concerned about the amount of butter that you're using. If butter doesn't work for you, you could try ghee in this recipe. And if you were looking for a plant-based version, you could use a nice cashew butter, or you could just use olive oil. And then what I love to do is with my 1 stick of butter, I then love to use the paper to then grease my baking sheet. That way you're getting every little piece that's left on the paper, and there's less waste. So we got that going. We're going to start to melt our butter. Check on our pasta, just occasionally stir it so nothing sticks. So I'm going to get my butter nice and melted, and then I'm going to add cassava flour. So this recipe is gluten-free. I love using cassava flour. You can use any alternative flour you like. You could use gluten-free flour, but I like cassava because it's from a root vegetable. It's also known as tapioca flour, and it's a root vegetable that for hundreds of years has been used as a flour. So I like to avoid alternative flours that are kind of new age flour. So I avoid garbanzo bean flour or any flour where The plant wasn't meant to be dried and ground and prepared this way, but cassava is a really good alternative. So you probably noticed I'm using a really big pot to melt the butter. And that's because I want to do my cheese sauce in this size pot, so that way I can add my pasta, add my chard, stir it all up in one place, and then put it in my baking dish, and that way I've kind of used less containers. So when I cook, I'm always thinking about how many containers am I using, because that means I'm gonna have to clean up a lot more. So I try to keep things really concise. So my butter is all melted. It's ready for me to add my flour. Before I do that though, my pasta is ready. I'm gonna turn my butter down low. Pour my pasta out. So I poured my pasta out. I'm just gonna set that aside, and now I'm gonna work on my cheese sauce. So I'm gonna add a half a cup of cassava flour to my butter. And basically what we're doing is we're creating a roux. We're creating a homemade cheese sauce. So we're just gonna work that flour around the butter, get it all mixed together. I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of salt. Because we're using cheese, we don't need much, but a half a teaspoon is nice. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start whisking in my milk. So I'm using organic whole milk. If you didn't want to use whole milk or milk at all, you would want to use a really thick nut milk. So you'd want to use cashew milk or almond milk, but it's much better to use homemade for a recipe like this because you want to get it thick so it would be similar to the consistency of whole milk. Most store-bought nut milks and cashew milks are a little too thin. So this is where you would want to, pick quality over quantity and kind of use the best that you can prepare at home. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of milk at a time and whisk. So that way there are no clumps. There's no clumps with the flour, with the butter, with the milk. I have it over medium heat right now. I'm basically going to keep whisking until it starts to feel like I have a thick sauce. So right now it's just the milk, the cassava flour, the sea salt, and the butter. I'm just going to keep this moving because if you stopped and walked away now hoping that it will just get thick, the cassava flour will sink to the bottom and it will start to burn. So you just want to kind of keep stirring so none of the flour stops and settles. Usually it takes about a minute to 2 minutes depending on how much mac and cheese you're making. And then at some point as you go, you can kind of change your tool. So what I'm going to add next to the pot is an organic shredded white sharp cheddar cheese. You can use a raw sharp cheddar cheese, which is one of the ingredients that I love. You can use just an organic white sharp cheddar cheese. You can mix things up and you can use an orange cheddar if you prefer, or a Fiesta blend cheddar. If you're looking for an alternative, you can use a nut milk cheese. They don't tend to melt as well, so just be mindful of that you might not get the consistency that you're looking for, but you're always willing to try. And if you start to see clumps again from the flour because you walked away for it too long, just go ahead and give it a stir. Okay, I can feel it now. It is perfectly thick. I love it. I'm gonna go ahead and add my cheese. I'm gonna turn off the heat so nothing overcooks or burns. And I'm just gonna melt the cheese into the sauce. And this is making our beautiful white cheddar mac and cheese sauce. So you can kind of see how easy it is to make a cheese sauce. So I have a nice, beautiful white cheddar cheese sauce. I'm just going to continue to stir it to make sure all the pieces of shredded cheese are fully melted. We're pretty good. So now I can add my pasta, and then I'll sprinkle in my chard. Ooh, there we go. And see, this is why you undercook your brown rice or your quinoa pasta, so you can stir it around like this. You know, if you're using any of the lentil pastas, you also have to undercook those, or else when you get to this stage of making mac and cheese, the hot cheese sauce will just overcook the pasta and you'll just get mush. And I know that because it's happened to me before. Okay, so the pasta is perfectly stirred up and mixed with all the cheese sauce. I get to start adding the beautiful green chard. And I think this is what makes this recipe so special and health supportive and high vibrational, is the use of this beautiful, beautiful green chard. So I use 2 whole big bunches of beautiful green chard. You know, feel free to use 3 if you like. I've always had clients ask for more chard than for less chard, because there's nothing like a nice green vegetable covered in really good cheese. I'm gonna put the mac and cheese with chard in my buttered pan. So that is it. So all I do next is put this in the oven at 400 degrees for 15 minutes. If you have the convection setting available on your oven, I suggest that, because that'll help you get some nice natural browning on top. What you can also do is finish it under the broiler if you want a little crispiness on top of your mac and cheese. But just in the oven, 15 minutes, and you're good to go. Perfect. All right. We got white cheddar mac and cheese with green chard ready to go. Let's scoop a little out. We'll just pretend that you're here with me so you can try it. You can see I started to get a little bit of browning on it from having it under convection setting. You can always leave the mac and cheese in the oven a little bit longer if you want more browning on top, or you can finish it under the broiler. Some people like a little more crispiness, and it's a great way to get crispiness without having to use breadcrumbs. So that is it. You have a beautiful, health supportive, white cheddar and chard mac and cheese, completely gluten-free, filled with vegetables, creating a more high vibration dinner.